The world of Fallout is a harsh one. You might have to kill, steal, betray, and at the end of it all, only have a few caps to rub together. If the wildlife doesn't get you, the populace will, and it's easy to see why trust is rarer than robot rocking horse in the wasteland. Through your journeys as lone wanderers, soul survivors, couriers, and more, you will witness evil in many, many forms. And if you're so inclined, some of these events will come at your own hands. So, with this in mind, I'm Jules, the sole Southwest savage survivor of Gateshead, and I want to talk to you about the most evil choice that Fallout let you get away with. General murder, theft, putting grenades into people's pockets, this sort of stuff is just par for the course. So what we're going to do is we're going to lump it all together in this tier 1 slot of evil. You make a choice, you end a life or take an object, and that's it. The karma punishment is low, and unless you fancy yourself a post-nuclear Ted Bundy and eat people in the process, it pales into comparison to the rest of this video. Now, the first thing that people may think of as a true evil act is detonating the bomb within Megaton in Fallout 3, and you'd be right to consider this, as, well, I mean, come on, you're an asshole. You did it for what? An apartment in a ghoul hater's hotel who has a henchman who makes the Nazi from Indiana Jones look like a social butterfly? It's a terrible act, not only because you have to go through many steps in order to get there to push the button, but you have to watch your choice unfold. The game recognizes this as well, with the negative karma you reap from this act being huge, but it's not enough to harm the spirits of Moira, who somehow survives the blast, bless her. But if that's not your style, maybe you're a kid killer, somebody who took pleasure in Fallout 1 and 2 clearing out the little pickpockets with whatever weapons you could. After all, it's survival of the fittest here in the reshaped world of Fallout, and anyone who tries to take from you is as good as dead. I mean, sure, it's pretty evil, they are just kids after all, but it's not that the game punishes you much for these actions apart from sending bounty hunters after you. After all, if you're okay killing kids, then you're gonna be okay taking that loot that these bounty hunters are practically bringing to your doorstep. No, a much more evil child-related decision comes up in the Fallout 3 DLC, The Pit, in which you discover that a little baby called Marie has developed a resistance to the virus that's plaguing the area. In an effort to try and spread the cure, you can steal this baby from her parents and hand her over to a researcher who really couldn't give two Brahmin dungs about her safety. By handing over this baby, you're giving her life willingly into potential suffering, trials, and experimentation. However, I guess you could look at it in a different way, that you're offering up a chance to save thousands of others, so yeah, give up the little sod for all I care. Creeps me out that she never cries, and when you drop her with console commands, she turns into a gnome. Well, surely the most evil action comes at the end of the Nuka World DLC. YouTuber Oxhorn, who is a beautiful man and extremely knowledgeable on the subject, as well as many other Fallout-related things, broke down the ending of this DLC in a video and why it's extremely evil. To shorten the proceedings, you basically become the big boss raider boy and can begin taking over settlements, your settlements, and converting them into raider bases to pillage and kill in your name. Oh, and you also get to tell Preston Garvey to do one, so I was all about this choice. This is a massive step up from just killing and stealing, as this required thought. This required planning, and what you're doing here is stating clearly that you will take from the world what you need and want, instead of letting society attempt to flourish under calmer means. By choosing to invade peaceful settlements, you are declaring war on the area. That is a choice that you can make, and it's pretty f***ing evil. However, what about an action that leads to the deaths of potentially thousands, tens of thousands, even millions that you, as a player, simply don't give a f*** about? I'm speaking, of course, about the time in Fallout 3's Mothership Zeta DLC where you can fire a death ray at Earth. Now, I need to remind you that the DLC is considered canon within the Fallout universe, and so theoretically, if you did decide to set this thing off and allow the death ray to vaporize its supposed target, then you are indeed killing off more than just the bloody atmosphere. The Fallout Wiki lists the impact point as being near Algonquin National Park in Ontario, Canada, reaching out for over 350 miles and consuming Detroit in the process. The explosion can be seen from space with the naked eye, giving you an impression of how large in scale it is. And now, I'm not a scientist, as my intelligence is set to 2, but even I can say that, much like your mum, it's a pretty f***ing big bang. There's my 1 per editorial. I did actually try to crunch the numbers, and if we were to go off the mean population for just Ontario and Detroit, you're looking at nearly 15 million people. Even if just 1% of them survived the Great War, that's 1.5 million people who theoretically could have been slapped by your rogue Zap. And you know what the best/worst part is? You don't even get a karma punishment for doing it. You could argue that the lone wanderer is exempt from guilt because they didn't know what they were doing, but that doesn't excuse the fact that upon seeing it happen that they are so removed from feeling any guilt. This likely extinguished tens of thousands of lives, and yet here we sit, not even contemplating its effects. Surely this moral passiveness is an indication that we are playing as a sociopath, that the act of saying whoops and just shrugging it off is much worse than feeling any remorse. This one act is like the game giving you an evil freebie, allowing you to wear a jacket of apathy rather than punish you for your choices. And lest we not forget, it was a choice.